Hi, and welcome to this week's Orange Reading Group. This week we are reading Treks Through Time. This week it is an informational article. Remember, informational articles means it's going to be nonfiction, it's a true story. It's going to provide information and facts about people, places, and things, and it might include some of those text features we just learned about, the sidebar, where it kind of has it down below or off to the side. It gives us some more information about a specific part of the topic we're learning about. Or it could even include a different map to show us about the areas and places that we're talking about. As we get into our story, you'll see there's an introduction. That's going to give us some information about our topic before we get into the actual chapters of the story. Then we'll get into chapter 1, the beginning, chapter 2, the dig, chapter 3, more than a dig, and then a conclusion. Remember, a conclusion kind of wraps up the story and finishes it up. Then you'll answer questions 1 through 4 for the respond to reading page. Then you'll finish reading the ancient one and answer questions 5 and 6. Introduction. Archaeology is the study of the past. It takes place all over the world in different environments. Archaeologists often excavate a site for evidence. They remove earth to uncover what is underground. So excavate means they remove the earth so they can find any of those things that are left behind by the people that were there before. Archaeologists can find artifacts when they excavate. Archaeologists call the objects people used artifacts. We might call them belongings. Artifacts or belongings offer us fascinating clues to how people lived. Archaeology helps us learn about the way people lived. Archaeologists learn a lot by asking questions. For example, they might ask, did adults wear jewelry? Did both men and women wear jewelry? Archaeology is important. It helps students learn about the past. It helps descendant communities or people that come from that family. So it could be the great-great-grandchildren, because when you have a descendant, it means you have the grandparent that had their child, who had their child, who had their child, who had their child. So descendants of the people archaeologists are studying are what they call the descendant communities. It helps them to learn about their ancestors. Now you can see here in the photograph in the background, you can see the photograph says archaeologists can work underground or underwater. It's kind of neat to think that an archaeologist can put on scuba gear and go find artifacts left behind by people. Chapter 1, the beginning. Archaeology starts with a research question. Dr. Smith is a Native American archaeologist. She wants to know how the ancient Mississippian culture built mounds. They built them at a site called Cahokia. It is in Illinois. She begins by gathering information about the Mississippian culture. Dr. Smith will visit museums and universities. She will study artifacts that may help answer her research question. Dr. Smith can also ask descendant communities for information. The descendant community may have an oral tradition, a telling of stories that's passed down from a grandparent to a grandchild to their grandchild to their grandchild to their grandchild, but is never written down. Or they could have records, things that are written down, that will help Dr. Smith. If more information is needed, Dr. Smith will excavate the site. She will work with descendant communities whose ancestors built Cahokia. To prepare for the expedition, she must answer these questions. How many people are needed? That means how many people does she need to come help her dig at the site? What tools will we need? Because they have all kinds of different special tools depending upon what they're digging. You have bigger tools, you have smaller tools, you have things like picks that are made to get into some very small areas. How will we preserve the artifacts we find? How are they going to take care of them and make sure they don't get damaged or chipped or different things broken? Is it something that's going to be brought up out of the ground and it's going to fall apart because it's been in the ground so long? They have to be very careful about bringing things into the air and if they could break apart because of the air. Choosing to excavate is a big decision. After a dig, the land will never be the same. So if you lose something in that dig, you can never replace it again, and the land will never go back to looking the way that it did before. Down below, you can see one of those sidebars. This is going to tell us more about Cahokia. Cahokia, a Native American city. Cahokia is the site of an ancient city. It was built by and lived in by native peoples from AD 1050 to AD 1300. The Native Americans, we often call them American Indians, used complex planning and architecture to build the city. Cahokia once had over 100 human-made earthen mounds. Mounds made out of earth, grass, dirt, soil, whatever you want to call it. Today, there are only 80 mounds. So they've taken 10 of those away from studying the culture and figuring that out. And those 10 mounds will never come back. Oh, excuse me, 20 mounds. I did subtraction by 90, not 80. My bad. The largest of these is called Monk's Mound. Monk's Mound is as tall as a 10-story building and as long as 3 football fields. So if we think about our school is 2 stories high. That means it would be 8 more stories above that, 8 more floors that you would see in order to be as tall as this mound. And our football field, we would have to have 3 of those lined up to be as wide as this mound is. That's huge. Now, here in Ohio, we have a really cool thing. We actually have a serpent mound. You may have heard about it in social studies. It looks like this. And it actually, at the front of it, it actually looks like a serpent or a snake's head. Down below, I'm going to pull up a map. You can see I've highlighted 2 counties on our Ohio map. The one that's toward the top, it's in the northeast, that's yellow. That's where Salem is in Columbiana County. Down below to the southwest, you can see the other one I've highlighted in yellow. That's Adams County. That red dot that's in there, that's where the Serpent Mound is located. Now, if you want to know more about the Serpent Mound, I've attached a YouTube video to your reading group this week that actually has a short video about Serpent Mound and more about the Ohio mound builders. It's very interesting. Above, you can see a picture, a dig on the Mashantucket Pequot Reservation. Tribal Historic Preservation Office. In the United States, many Native American tribes have a special office. This office protects ancient sites during an excavation. It also handles the repatriation or the giving back of sacred objects. The Mille Lacs Band of Obijiewa in Minnesota has this office. An archaeologist is on staff there. The archaeologist's job is to make sure that ancient sites are protected. Now, down below has a stop and check. What do archaeologists have to do before they can excavate a site? Right, we have to think about how many people need to be there, what kind of tools they need to have, and if it's really something they have to do because it'll never be the same afterwards. Chapter 2, the dig. Archaeologists have a special way of digging. First, Dr. Smith makes a grid on the ground. Then she labels each square within the grid. This helps her team know which artifacts come from what areas. The team removes buckets of dirt from their squares. They use shake screens with tiny holes to sift through the dirt. Small pieces of tools and pottery are left in the screens. The team uses shovels to scrape the bottom of their squares. They are looking for features in the earth. For example, if there is a hearth where they are digging, they will use an outline of charcoal. Archaeologists learn about the lives of ancient people from everyday objects. So you can see that looks like a bowl. A graduate student records information at a dig. Teams document the artifacts they find. They note where the items were found and describe them. As the team digs deeper, the things they find get older. An artifact found near the surface could be 300 years old, but an artifact found several feet deeper could be from an earlier era or an earlier time. Archaeologists find more than artifacts at sites. Sometimes a site has human remains. By testing bone and teeth samples, the team can figure out if the person is male or female. They can also tell their age. Dr. Smith must be careful if she finds human remains. They might come from the ancestors of descendant communities. The community may not want their ancestors moved. Sometimes the community will allow the study of remains. In these cases, archaeologists work with descendants. Dr. Smith will take a sample of earth from the mound. She will study this sample. It will tell her how the mound was built and what kinds of dirt were used. Stop and check. Why did Dr. Smith take a sample from the mound? Right, because it tells her how the mound was built and what kind of dirt was used. Chapter 3, More Than a Dig. After the dig, artifacts are taken back to the lab. Dr. Smith will learn a tremendous amount from the artifacts. Perhaps her team has found a hide scraper. This tool shows that people at this site made clothes from animal hides or their skins. Then the team will study the stone used to make the scraper. What if the stone came from far away? Dr. Smith might conclude that the Mississippian people traded with faraway people. Down below, it is better to be safe than sorry. A proverb or adage. Some artifacts might break away. They are stored in special bags and boxes. So thinking about that adage, use your context clues. It is better to be safe than sorry. Some artifacts might break, so they are stored in special bags and boxes. What does it mean to be safe than sorry? At the top, radiocarbon dating can be used on bone, wood, plants, or anything else that was once alive. Dr. Smith took charcoal samples from next to the mound. She can date the charcoal with radiocarbon dating. Things that were once alive have carbon. Carbon is not permanent. It decays or breaks down over time. The amount of carbon left in an object tells how old it is. Dr. Smith will measure the carbon in the charcoal. It will tell her how old the charcoal and the mound are. Places such as universities and museums will store the artifacts. Museums exhibits teach people about what the archaeologists have learned. However, descendant communities might want artifacts returned. In the United States, archaeologists and museums are required by law to work with descendant communities. They must honor the descendants' wishes about where to keep the artifacts. Not all descendant communities want artifacts returned. Sometimes they only wish to visit objects that are sacred to them. Such artifacts are special, but they may not be seen. They may also be seen and studied by everyone. Stop and check. Why is it important for archaeologists to work with descendant communities? Right, because those communities might think that the artifacts are really important and they may want those to come back home to them so that they can have them with them, or they might be okay with them going into a museum so more people can learn about them. The photograph on this page says the Heard Museum of American Indian Art and History in Phoenix, Arizona, displays art and artifacts to the public. Conclusion, closing up our story. Throughout history, archaeologists could do what they wanted. Little respect was paid to Native American lands and artifacts. Today's laws help to prevent such actions. Archaeology is a team effort. Archaeologists work with a team when they excavate. They ask other scientists questions. They work with and learn from descendant communities. The future of archaeology is bright with collaboration and more ways to teach the world about its past. Down below, a dig is one of the ways archaeologists learn about the past. Now you have to complete your respond to reading questions. Question 1 says, how can you tell this is an informational article? Remember to go back to what we talked about how you know it's an informational article. Don't guess. Then question 2, use the information on pages 4 through 5 to explain the steps archaeologists follow before they excavate. Remember, you're putting this in a sequence. You're putting it in order. This might be where you use your chart and you have that chart help you answer questions the question 2, pages 4 through 5, the sequence or the steps for an archaeologist excavating. Number 3, what adage is used in the caption on page 10 and what does it mean? Remember, that's that adage that we read about and we talked about the context clues. Now you have to tell me what it means. Number 4, write about how today's archaeologists work with descendant communities. How does working together ensure that sites and artifacts are treated with respect? This is our overall idea from the story. You're going to want to really figure out why it matters that the archaeologist and descendant communities work together. And we're looking at now our second story. This is also an informational article, the ancient one. The Kennewick Man is now at the Burke Museum in Seattle, Washington. So you see here, this is a map of Washington State in the United States. The ancient one is the remains of a man more than 8,000 years old. He is also called Kennewick Man. His bones were found in 1996 near Kennewick, Washington. Facial reconstruction helps us understand what the person may have looked like. After he was found, the Confederated Tribes of Utmalia Indian Reservation wanted to rebury the ancient ones. The Utmalia oral history says the ancient one is part of their tribe. A group of scientists disagreed. They said that the ancient one was not Native American. Other scientists agreed that the ancient one was Native American, but they said they had the right to study the ancient one. The scientists sued the government. They did not want the ancient one returned to Umatilla. The case took 9 years. In the end, the tribe lost. The court decided the remains were not linked to living Native Americans or American Indians. Scientists continue to study the ancient one. In 2015, Danish scientist presented a DNA study they had done. They found that the Ancient One is closely related to Native Americans. The Umatilla hopes the new study will help them reclaim the Ancient One. This conflict is an example of what can happen when people have different beliefs about their ancestors. Laws have been made to help tribes repatriate their sacred objects and the remains of their people. Now you're going to answer the make connections questions. Now, you may have noticed when I was reading that I had a hard time pronouncing some words. You're going to find that a lot with informational text. There are going to be some words that are just really hard to pronounce, and you can try over and over and over again to pronounce them, and they're still hard. Sometimes there's something that you can do where you can look up the pronunciation or how to say the word. YouTube has a lot of videos for words that are hard to say when you're working on your own at home. The other thing that you can do is take your best guess, use your context clues for what it means, and kind of move on with life. So the make connections questions. These would be questions 5 and 6 for your respond to reading. You're going to want to make sure to answer, why did the findings of the Danish scientist in 2015 give new hope to the Umatilla? Then, question 6, what procedures do you think scientists followed when collecting and studying the remains of the Ancient One? Now remember, question 6 is connected to the first story that you read. Remember those steps you talked about in your other question. What steps might they have followed when they collected the Ancient One based upon the first story? It is not going to tell you the steps they really took. You're going to have to infer or use your best judgment from the first story that you read. Remember, your teachers are here to help. Reach out and ask questions if you need us. Good luck and work hard.